Well, China's been earmarked to be the world's biggest market for auto sales and exports by 2025, with demand for electric vehicles expected to be the highest in emerging markets. Joining us in studio to shed light on the way forward for global auto players is Gavin Maile, who's Africa Automotive Sector Leader at KPMG. Gavin, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Let's get straight into it because we're putting the spotlight, as I said, on the automotive sector. It's a sector where growth hinges on overall economic growth, and there are question marks at this stage with regards to China, with regards to Europe as well, and the kind of impact that's going to have on demand within the automotive space. So what's your assessment? Because when we're speaking to traders at the desk, it's pretty much a very murky outlook that we're looking at.
Good afternoon, Alishia. I think it is very difficult to make a projection that is likely to be correct where we stand at the moment. The global markets are still a lot in turmoil. But I think you started off with China. And China, although growth has come down, it's still significant growth. And I mean, in Africa and South Africa, we'd be very happy with that type of growth. So there is still good growth. The markets are still going well. Demand, last year, for example, 18.5 million vehicles were sold in China. Now, that is more per month than what we aspire to in South Africa on an annual basis. Yeah. So we put it in context that China is so big and so dominant in terms of all the BRIC countries that it is powering ahead. And I don't think any of the issues that global markets have are going to impact on what happens in China.
Powering ahead enough to actually lead world market share, as we were saying earlier, amongst emerging markets, which it's currently doing, right?
It's currently doing that, but it's even going to grow further significantly. That if you take BRICS as a whole, now China is multiples the size of the next players, which are India and Brazil. In fact, probably close to 4 or 5 times the size of the market from an automotive point of view. But the BRICS as a body are going to have 43% of the market share of automotive sales in 2016.
What does that do to the demand-supply dynamic? Because this is all, for now, within a context where we're still facing major overcapacity, it seems, more than anything else.
China at the moment has overcapacity. It's predicted to get worse. They're talking about 6,000 units of overcapacity by 2016. Now, to put that in context, that's twice the German car market in terms of overcapacity. What doesn't come out clearly in terms of the analysts and the way they speak about it is that capacity is not the newest, latest model type capacity. China has come a long way in a very short time. And a lot of that capacity relates to old technologies, and the convergence in China and the emerging markets in terms of safety, in terms of quality, that is the survey respondents predict by 2025 there's going to be no difference. Yeah. So in the past, the quality, the safety and the environmental aspects have not been first world, if you like, but they're catching up really, really quickly.
What does this do to the supply side of things? Because players within the automotive sector would be interested in that, how this entire scenario that you've outlined is actually going to impact pricing going forward.
Well, interesting, China's first priority is to service their own demand. Yeah. Now, their demand is growing so quickly that I suppose the rest of the world can be thankful that they have to focus on their own market. But by 2016, the respondents are forecasting that China will supply over 1 million units into the foreign markets. Now, 1 million units is not a great number in terms of the expected market by 2016 of assuming the world continues on a growth path of 90 million, 100 million units. But it is a significant change from in the past where China has been a very small supplier of vehicles into other markets. Whether they will continue to remain as competitive as we've seen in the past, I think with the convergence and the safety and the quality and the environmental, I think that price differential will not be as great as what we've seen in the past.
Let's hone in on some of those factors that you've outlined there that would influence things moving forward. I mean, you've got various fuel technologies, for example, coming to bear. Just how fast an evolution are we seeing in the sector when it comes to developing technology and innovation right now?
Not as fast as we thought things were going to move on. Electric vehicles is still not going to be a dominant share. I think in China they're talking 25% by 2025 are likely to be electric.
What are some of the factors that are actually hindering that progress? Because you say it's not as fast as anticipated. So what are some of the factors that are now coming to bear?
Cost is one of the factor. Electric vehicle, the research and development that's required to go into that is fairly significant. But I suppose the biggest issue is the battery. And there's two issues with the battery. One is the lifespan of the battery, how long does it last before it needs recharging, and then the amount of time needed to recharge it. So that is probably the biggest critical factor in terms of making electric vehicles a more popular choice, is the limitation on the battery.
Especially where you've got growth reliant on emerging markets. And if we hone in on an emerging market like South Africa, for example, the viability of electric vehicles in our market has been brought to question, where we're looking at a grid that is completely, overstrained at this stage.
Well, the intelligent electric vehicle, and if we come back just to those two issues, one is the battery lifespan. How far can you go with a battery before it needs recharging, and then how long it takes to recharge. Now, with the intelligent charging mechanisms that are available, we in South Africa have proved that you can charge on our existing grid during periods of non-peak. So say between 2 and 3, 4, 5 in the morning, before people wake up. If the technology exists to be able to charge your battery, and if you could charge it fully in that short period of time, all we're doing is we're leveling the amount of power we're taking off the grid. Whereas at the moment there's a lot of spikes. So if we can level that power and take the power to charge our vehicles during a time that nobody else is using much power, then we don't have that problem. So our existing grid is capable. The problem is it takes too long to charge, so you can't recharge it in that 3 or 4 hour window that we may have.
So in terms of outlook, particularly in South Africa for the electric vehicle, I mean, what are you forecasting in terms of uptake, and just what kind of targets have been set?
I think we still have a long way to go in South Africa. Part of the challenges with electric vehicles is you need charging stations. So, and the distance that you can travel. South Africa is a vast country. If it's just simply commuting around town, and one of the other big areas, just urbanization and the impact that's having on the vehicle, then we don't have a big problem, because you can easily get around Johannesburg, assuming there's no congestions and the tolls and everything are working correctly, then you don't have a limit. But at the moment, the distance that you can travel on a fully charged battery is probably the limiting factor in terms of the uptake. Yeah. But then there's how do you recharge it? So if you're going from a customer to another customer, where do you park? So it's like a petrol station. We need stations where you park and you're able to top up your battery.
Well, Gavin, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for your insights this afternoon.